Hey folks, thank you all for being here. I know it's very late. You're probably all very tired and want to go home, so I'll tell you something about not React for once. You've probably had a lot of React talks today because we're at a React conference, but I don't know. I'm going to talk about more JavaScript because, hey, React is really just JavaScript, right? And why don't we talk a little bit about JavaScript? So my talk is JavaScript should come with batteries, and let me explain what actually, let me first introduce who I am. That's probably useful. So I'm Luca. I'm a software engineer at the Deno company. Some of you may have heard of Deno. If not, I'll get to that in a second. I work on various things related to Deno. I built a front-end framework for Deno called Fresh that some of you may have seen. And I do a bunch of standards work at TC39, standardizing the JavaScript language, and at Whatwig and W3C, standardizing things like fetch, HTML, and I'm a co-chair at WinterCG, which is a community group at the W3C where we try to make server-side JavaScript runtimes more interoperable. So making Node.js work better with Deno, and Deno better with Cloudflare workers, with Run, with whatever, right? So about my talk today, I have this premise that I'm going to try to argue, which is that JavaScript is too bare bones, and this is bad. And what I mean by this is that JavaScript doesn't really have an extensive standard library or default tooling, but rather everybody sort of has to pack everything they want in their project together themselves. And this means that if you're setting up a new project, you have to go stare at a table like this and fill in the right-hand side, right? I need a formatter, so let me choose a formatter. Like, do I use dprint? Do I use prettier? Do I just use auto-formatting in VS Code, or do I use none? Linting, testing, types, do I want to use TypeScript or not? If so, now I need to have all of my tools support TypeScript. Maybe I want to set up benchmarking, documentation generation if I have a library. And then you need to pull in a bunch of packages for things that you're going to need to do. Like, you need to pull in a package to do YAML parsing because you have a config file that's written in YAML that some other team gave you, or you want to have some service that you're calling and it fails very frequently, so you want to do that with retries. You need to pull in some library for that. And this ends up with every tool and API that you sort of need. You need to have one more package that you install. So you have this very large package.json folder. And this becomes even more complicated because there's so many different tools out there. When you want to use them together, things become even more complicated, right? You can install eslint. I hope your beer is fine. So yeah, when you install eslint and you want to use that with TypeScript, that doesn't work out of the box, right? You need to install another tool called TypeScript eslint, and you don't just install one, you install two packages, you add a bunch of stuff to your eslint config file. You need to have a config file for eslint also. Same thing with JSX, right? You need to add plugins for that. ESM. Actually, eslint is pretty good about ESM. One of the sort of standout tools here regarding ESM support. Still couldn't use config files up until a couple of weeks ago, months ago, I don't know. But there's some really bad ones, and I don't mean to hate on the folks building Jest. A lot of this boils down to other projects that they use not supporting tools well, but Jest and TypeScript, getting that set up, not fun. You want to throw JSX into the mix, you need to set up more config. And here, you're not even setting up config for Jest, you're setting up config for Babel. It's okay, I guess I'm using Babel now. And ESM, just don't use ESM if you use Jest. If you want to test in ESM, just don't use Jest. And then your node modules folder looks like this, right? You have 100 dependencies in your package.json and 300 megabyte package or node modules folder. And you just set up a config file, and then you have a project like this, right? And imagine coming to a company and you download the repo and you want to start working, and you're greeted by this. This is not fun, right? This is not something you want. You just want to get set up and everything just works. And you want to start a new project, you don't want to have to set this up. You just want to have it work out of the box. So how do we solve this? And as a JavaScript developer, you may be wondering, yeah, how do we solve this? But if you sort of float around other language ecosystems sometimes, you can see that some ecosystems solve this really well. Some do it very poorly, but some do it really well. For example, Rust and Go. And I'm using these specifically because they're about the same age as JavaScript. So you can't say JavaScript is old or Node is old, and because of that, you can't it doesn't have this. Like Go was released the same year that Node was released. And Rust was released just a couple years later. And these have very extensive standard libraries and tools built in. Like formatting comes out of the box. Testing comes out of the box. Everybody uses the same test runner. And like, I mean everyone, right? Like this is not 80% of people use the same test runner. Everyone uses the same test runner. Documentation generation, benchmarking. And this is really great because you can get started on a new project without spending any time on configuration. You open up a folder, create a file, write some code in the file, run the file. And that file now has formatting, linting, testing, all of that set up out of the box because it comes with a tool that you use to run the file. If you're building in a tool, in a team, this means you don't have to have discussions with your team about like, do I like eslint or like Rome or whatever, right? Whatever is being used that day. Everybody uses the same thing. No discussions, and like switching between companies and even teams within a company becomes really easy because if you know the tools from one project, they translate exactly to any other project because all other projects use the same tooling. So let's do something about this. Why don't we get to this state with JavaScript? And this is something that my boss, Ryan Dahl, thought like 5 years ago at this point. Ryan Dahl, if you don't know him, is the original creator of Node. In 2010, he released the first version of Node actually in Berlin on a stage not too far from here. Ryan then went on to use Go for a couple of years, and where he saw like all of these nice built-in tooling things, and then came back to JavaScript in 2018 and realized like there was a problem here that needed solving. So in May 2020, 10 years after the original release of Node, we released Deno to fix some of these problems. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that, show you what it looks like, and sort of what kind of experience you can have when tooling just comes out of the box. So a little bit about Deno. Deno is a next-generation JavaScript runtime that's incredibly simple to get started. And like, you don't have to take my word for this. I will give you some code demos in a second. It really is. Secure by default, native support for TypeScript and JSX out of the box, has built-in testing, linting, formatting, a language server for VS Code, documentation generation, you name it, single file executables, a bundler, go on and on, right? It has web standard APIs built out of the box, so like if you want to use, if you're coming from the front end, which most of you probably are, you're front end developers, there's a lot of APIs in there that you just know. Like if you want to make an HTTP call, use fetch. If you want to stream some data around, you use web streams. If you want to, like, I don't know, store some strings in a key value database somewhere, very little, you use local storage. It's backwards compatible with Node.js and NPM since pretty recently, and it's used by a lot of large companies. We have like, I think the website says 250,000 monthly active users, but I don't know, that's a couple months old at this point. To install Deno, you just run a single command, and this is really all it does, right? Like it really installs a single binary. There's no lib files, OpenSSL, anything you need to install. It's just a single binary, and then you can get started. And then this is what your setup Deno project looks like. There's nothing in the folder, right? To get started, I create a file. And I'm going to create a TypeScript file. I told you I can run TypeScript out of the box. So create a TypeScript file. And I write some code in here. And let me turn off Copilot so it doesn't annoy me. Did that work? It did. Fantastic. And then I just run TypeScript. And this works. And this is like actually TypeScript, right? Like I can put this in here, and this still works. So actually running TypeScript. Yeah, so that's very basic things. Now you're wondering, like, OK, I can console log. This is not very helpful. I can do nothing by just console logging. So let's do some I/O. Let me read a file from disk. There's a nice file that's stored on all Unix systems called etc password. Which, unlike the name suggests, doesn't actually store my password. But it's fun to log out, so let's log that file out. Did Copilot not disable? I thought I disabled this. OK. And when I do this, you're actually going to see something else. Look down here at the terminal. So I ran, let me zoom out one. I ran Deno, and it asked me to give permission to read this file. And this is what I mean with secure by default. So in the browser, if you create a website and you want to send user notifications, you can't just do this always, right? It pops up a prompt to the user that asks the user, hey, do you actually want shady website 36 to send you notifications? Because probably you don't. This is really helpful. If you're running like some random script off GitHub and you don't really trust the author, just run it. Like if it tries to do something bad, you'll see. I'm going to allow this. Oh, I'll allow this. And there we go. It logs out my etc password file. So that's I/O. Permissions, you explicitly opt into them. You can either do this via the prompts like I just showed you, but you can also pass flags. So I can do Deno run -- allow read min.ts, and this bypasses the permission prompt. And like this is very granular, so you can also say like read only from EDC or only from this specific file, however you like. Web standards, I told you we have a bunch of web standards built in, so let's just like fetch something off the network, like, I don't know, example.com, and you're going to look at me here like writing a fetch statement, like you don't do, I'll do this every day. But what's kind of cool is like Deno uses web standards not just for things that are obvious, like fetching HTTP, but even for things like writing to standard out. So Deno's standard out is actually a web stream. Like this writable is a writable stream from the web, which means that I can do response.body.pipe to all web APIs, right? This is all web APIs. I wait that. If I run this, it pipes streaming the text to my console. So really, you use web APIs all over the place. And we take this pretty far. So we like very much try to work with other people in the space, like with Node, and with Cloudflare Workers, and with Bun, to sort of get them to all adopt these same APIs. So that code that you write for the front end can work on your server. This is really useful if you're doing like server-side rendering and hydration, right? You want to be able to just share the same code between the two. But also if you write code that needs to be portable across different server-side runtimes. And we like have a community group at the W3C, a standards group that's set up to do this, where we sort of talk about these things and figure out what APIs everyone should support. One more little demo I want to give you. Let's do some npm imports. So I told you it's backwards compatible. What's more backwards compatible, or what's more interesting than for backwards compatibility than Express? Everybody knows Express. So Deno can import Express, obviously. Let's build a little HTTP server. So to import npm packages in Deno, you just write an import statement, and you prefix them with npm:. And if you want to import a specific version, you can do that using an @ and you don't see, I don't have a package.json here. I don't have a node modules folder here, nothing. Just my one line of code here. And I can create an app. And you can actually see I have no typings here, because this is one of these other fun things with the existing ecosystem is a lot of old packages don't have types out of the box. So if I want to include a type, I have to tell Deno that I want those types. And this is the same thing you do in a package.json, where you specify your types with like pulling them from add types. So I'm going to pull a packet or the types here from types/express. And now you can see I have types and documentation. OK, so let's write a little server that takes a request and a response. And I forget what the API is. Send? Yes, send. That just sends out hello world. And you could send anything here, right? Like you could render some JSX. If I have time, I can show you that later. We listen on a port. And let's log out that the server has started. Listening on HTTP localhost 8000. OK. So let's run this. I trust Express, so I'm just going to run with all flags to not get permission prompts. I've shown you those already. And you can see, started up a server. It pulled in Express. Again, still no node modules folder, still no package.json. And I open this, and it runs. Hello world. OK. Let's talk a little bit about the tools that are built into Deno. So I told you there's tools built in, and actually you're seeing one of them working right now. This little orange squiggly line under request here is actually Deno lint that says request is never used. If this is intentional, prefix it with an underscore. there's a linter that just comes out of the box, no configuration necessary. And I can run this, Deno lint, reports the same error. I can fix it. And actually, you've seen the other tool that I'm going to demo already also, the formatter. Like, if I go and mess up my formatting here and format with Deno, formatted, no config necessary. And I can do the same using the command line. Oh. And if I want to run this in CI, I can have like a Deno format check that checks that you're formatted to like failed CI if you're not formatted. All just comes out of the box. I don't have time to show test and bench and all that kind of stuff right now, but yeah, you can look at those on the website. They're very easy to understand too. There's one more really cool thing that I think we have built in, which is a database. And you may be wondering, like, why do you have a database built in? And this is really part of that same philosophy that we should have everything that you need to develop an application just built into the runtime. So most people do not want to have to go through and choose what database they want. They just want something that works, that is easy to set up, that doesn't require configuration. And Deno KV is just that. It's a key value store, ACID compliant, so sort of has the same consistency as Postgres and other SQL databases. It's really built for serverless applications, built for running on the edge, has built-in support for task queues and scheduling, cron jobs, if anybody's familiar with that. Has support for key watching. It actually says coming soon, slightly older iteration of this slide. We just released that last Thursday. Oh, that was yesterday. Yeah, we released that yesterday. No setup, no install, no import. You can just use it. So let's integrate a little KV database in here. So I can deno.openkv. This opens my database. This is all I have to do, right? I have a database now. And now I can, let's add a visitor counter. You know those sites from like the early 2000s that had a little visitor counter at the bottom? I'm going to add one of those because I think they're cool. So let's have a key that we call visitors. Oh, visitors. And we're going to increment it by 1 every time you load the page. And this is an async operation, so we need to await it. And then this needs to be an async function. And let's grab the new value after we've set it. So await kv.get. We're going to get that same visitors key that we just set and just print that out as the response. So if I could type. It's getting kind of late already. OK, so Deno run main.ts. Oh, and actually, this is an unstable feature, so I need to do this. And where's my, there we go. OK, visitors, 1. I'm the only visitor to this page. Huh, weird, right? And if every time I reload, increments by 1. And if I shut down the server and start it up again, it resumes where it left off, right? So this is an actually persistent database. This is not like some in-memory stuff. And what makes this really cool is the next thing I want to show you, which is how we make money. And you're going to think, like, why is this relevant? But Deno's an open source project, and I think it's really important to sort of be very transparent about how open source projects make money, because otherwise, like, you're going to think we just like are giving you all this free cool stuff, and at some point we're going to say, hey, actually starting next Monday, you're all going to pay us $10 a month, and otherwise you can't use it anymore. That's not how we want to do things. So everything you've seen so far is totally free, totally open source, MIT license on GitHub. You can contribute to it. It's written in Rust. But we provide a hosting solution for Deno called Deno Deploy, which is a hosting platform not just for Deno, but actually for all serverless JavaScript. Like, you can run node projects on there too. And it works really great for Deno because it runs on the edge, like sort of similar to Cloudflare Workers, but it has built-in support for node modules. It has this built-in global database. I'll show you that in just a second, running all over the world. Deploys directly from GitHub, so you have a very similar experience to like when you're deploying from with like Vercel or Netlify or any of these services, right, where you're pulling right from GitHub. And we have an offering for enterprise customers that want to like just run some JavaScript as part of their product. If any of you are building SaaS products that like use webhooks, why don't you just let users just write some code directly in your product rather than having to webhook out to them? So this is part of our sort of philosophy that we want to make it really easy for you to build and test your projects locally, and then very seamlessly be able to deploy them to either our platform or to like Google Cloud Run or Vercel or Netlify or really any place. but then have them backed by sort of much more globally distributed APIs. In the same runtime, same APIs, but just backed by systems that are built for scale rather than systems built for you to run your tests. And an example of this is that Deno KV database that I showed you earlier. Locally, it's backed by SQLite. And when it's deployed, it's actually backed by FoundationDB, which is the same thing that all of you use when you use your iPhones every day, right? Like iCloud is backed by FoundationDB. It's a very, very scalable, globally distributable database, very robust. And I have like 0 seconds left, so I just want to quickly demo how to deploy this. We have this tool called deployctl that lets you deploy a project, and let's count here 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. OK, there's a URL. If you all visit this URL on your phone right now, you're going to see a visitor counter. So how high can we go? I'm visitor number 1. Anybody daring to be visitor number 2? Oh, still number 2. Nobody's gone there yet. Oh, somebody else has gone there already. Come on, people. We need to accelerate this. This needs to be one of those like skyrocket moments. 44. There we go. This is what I'm talking about. OK, so visitor counters, globally distributed, scalable, right? This just works. And 13 seconds. I didn't configure anything here beforehand. It created a project, created a database, and deployed my service, all in those 13 seconds. So, quick recap what we've done here. In a matter of 20 minutes, I've started a new project from scratch with a formatter, a linter, a database, NPM dependencies. If I wanted to test some tests, benchmarking, documentation generation, compiling to a single executable, we deployed it to the cloud, and we used no tooling other than the tooling that comes out of the box with Deno. I didn't have to write a single configuration file. And we've so far used 16% of the tools built into Deno, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that we give you. And that's batteries included. And I think this is where we should really go with JavaScript. Not just in Deno, also in Node, also in other tools. Like tools should come out of the box with all the stuff you need to sort of build a successful product. Yeah, significantly increases productivity, but I think much more importantly, significantly increases fun while you're programming, right? Like nobody likes building config files. And if you never have to build config files, you can have much more fun building things you actually like. One more plug. I didn't talk about JSX at all or React or anything, so I needed to plug a front-end framework to sort of make this relevant to this conference. Fresh. Fresh is a front-end framework built for Deno using Preact rather than React, but it's all the same anyway. Sorry, no, it's not, I know. Again, no configuration, TypeScript support out of the box, 0 runtime overhead, can do sort of server-side rendering on the edge. Yeah, fresh. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening. Check out Deno. If you want to try Deno Deploy, deno.com/deploy. And if you want to join our Discord, discord.gg/Deno. And that's all I have. I have a bunch of stickers, though, and I need to get rid of these. Otherwise, my DevRel person's going to get mad at me. So, like, please pick up stickers on your way out. Thank you.